Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to our service of communion and the annual parochial church meeting. And you're very welcome, whether you're here in person or watching at home. And I'm very tempted to say, as it's Star Wars Day, may the 4th be with you. And we know that it's nothing about empire and everything about kingdom, don't we? So let's stand to sing our first hymn, hymn 137. I've got to say there is junior church if anybody has young children who wish to join Sarah in the Oak Group. The Lord be with you. And also with you. Let's prepare ourselves for this morning's worship and the work of the APCM by saying together, Amazing God, you know us really. You know all our secrets, and we don't know you enough. Help us to love you and focus on you. Help us take the right part and send your Holy Spirit among us in this service and forever. Please be seated for our first reading.
The reading is taken from Acts 9. Meanwhile, Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for the letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." This is the word of the Lord.
Gary, how many times through are we singing this hymn?
Sorry?
How many times are we singing?
Shall we do it twice?
Twice. I forgot to ask that question. Please stand and sing our second hymn, hymn 159, which we'll sing through twice.
Hear the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ according to John. The reading is taken from John 21, 1 to 19. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together was Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I am going fishing." They said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, have you no fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in, because there were so many fish. That disciple, whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the lake. But the other disciples came in with the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 meters off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there, with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went abroad and hauled the net full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now, none of the disciples dared to say, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus had appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he had asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten that belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And then he said to him, "Follow me." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated, and I'd ask you to bear with us for a couple of moments whilst we set up the table and the microphones for the APCN.
If anyone does not have a copy of the reports or the financial report and would like one, we'd like to put on the copy and ask the hand out.
might have to get the hand. There we go. Is that better? Fabulous. Right, welcome to the 2025 APCM of St Bartholomew's and St Anne's. You know what I've done? I've left my agenda on the side. I'll have to peer over you. I will try and make this the length of a sermon, but unfortunately that's going to depend rather on Dean. We will start with any apologies that we have had for this AGM. Now, I've had one from Richard Pithers and Linda Perry. Is anybody? Sue Sullivan?
John and Ross
Norden.
Nigel and Anne Stone.
Yeah, they've sent their apologies in advance. Oh, is it gone again? Giovanna Paradona, right. That must be how I'm holding this. Does that work? Okay. The first thing is in the minutes or in the report pack of the minutes from the last APCM in 2023. So I have to ask if anybody's got anything from those that they'd like. I'm going to hold this. Does that work? Fabulous. This is now my microphone. The minutes from last year's APCM are in the back of the report pack, or very nearly the back of the report pack. If anyone's got anything they would like to amend or think have been incorrectly reported, those that had a chance to read them last week. So I'll give you a moment for those. If there isn't anything, anyone? Sorry, Still not working? Does that work? Does that work better? Yeah! I'm going to hold it. If there's no amendments anybody wants to make to those minutes, I propose that we accept those minutes from last year's APCM, but I need a seconder for that. Anne Edwards. I don't believe we have actually any matters arising from those minutes. Yes.
Yeah, can I just ask a couple of things that popped up in the Q&A session at the end of last year's? It was raised about a legacy fund Betty Parks left, and was suggested that the finance committee looks to allocate the remaining funds to the organ fund. So that was just one question.
Can we have the questions at the end of the reports, and then anything financial Dean will answer at the end of his financial report? Is that all right?
Okay, yeah.
Is that okay? Right, I get my other job. The presentation of the electoral roll for this year. Very short, very sweet. It was a complete renewal this year. We scrubbed everybody and you all had to reapply yourselves. So we have 213 names on the electoral roll this year. And that's about it actually. So I, as electoral roll officer, propose that this be accepted at this meeting. If anybody, Cheryl Cole, to second. And a copy of the electoral roll is actually still up in the porch if anybody wants to have a look and check that I've spelt your name right. Everyone in favour of the electoral roll being accepted at this meeting? Any objections? Any abstentions? No. Right, you all hopefully now have a copy of the parish report available to you for those that didn't get one last week. All the reports are in there to peruse at your leisure. I'm not going to go through them all here. We have no vicar's report this year because we have no vicar. If anyone's had a chance to read through those and has any questions on those particular reports, so anything but the finances at the moment, feel free to ask them now. So we've got...
There's no report on the organ fund?
No, there isn't.
Which I find very surprising, because it's a major commitment. And I just wondered why no report is in there. We used to have one for when we did other major projects like the oak room and other things. There was always lots of information for you to tell what's going on and where we were in the actual funding process.
The actual funding process I will have to leave to Dean. I don't have the details of where the monies actually are at the moment. The general reports of what's going on with the organ fund are actually being displayed on a board at the back of church. So updates from the organ restorers are there. And other reports are going into the PCC, which will come out in the PCC reports. I'm hoping we're currently standing at the point where they're due to start returning the organ to church in the next 2 to 3 weeks. As far as I'm aware, they haven't had any major surprises at the restorers. It's pretty much going as expected. The only addition at the moment was the fact that we've had to lay a new concrete floor in the organ bay because the floor currently there was insufficient to support the organ itself. So that is pretty much where it stands at the moment. Yes, I think there was more than 3. I believe so. I couldn't swear to that myself because it was a while back and I don't remember, but I do believe it did.
There is something else actually about the that comes out in the Treasury report, which is I'll let you first that later.
Okay.
When you deal with Treasury. But as it is sort of about the report itself and not Treasury, is this the opportunity to talk about choir?
If you want.
Well, there's an absence of choir, we don't have one. One of the greatest commitments this church has is to its choir, which performs to its smallest audience. So those that perhaps in other parts of the country that benefit from seeing it tour will see it probably more frequently than we do, except on very special occasions. Now, if you're one of the 25 people who attend even so, you enjoy the choir. But because the report itself refers throughout the report to our faith, I wanted to bring this point to you, and that is the purpose of the choir. So the purpose of the choir is to lead us in worship for those of us that have busy lives, perhaps not as much time to worship as we would like to. But this is truly the position, the role of the choir. So, we all know that the famous hymns, praise, etc. The truth is that this year all the brothers decide upon which hymns to be performed. And whoever it is that makes those decisions doesn't choose from the top 50 hymns. They choose anything slightly or the side or about the reading book. So I can pick up on any one of them. I say to you that the vast majority of things outside the top 50, we don't really know. And that's the reason, that's the purpose of the choir. To lead us in worship with those things that we do not know. We're not going to expect that from, with all due respect to the youngsters that come here and know themselves and so forth. We're very grateful. However, the performance of the choir itself, one of the greatest expenses of this church, commits itself to the smallest audience. What do you intend to do about that?
Well, to be honest, there's not an awful lot we can do. Shall I?
If I may say something, I have the absolute delight of bringing my granddaughter to the Hoodie choir, to Hoodie practice on a Monday. And as I've come over the last, well, it's only a few months, I've become very aware that the Hoodie choir isn't just what you see at
here and delighting on a Sunday morning. The Hoodie Choir has actually created a community of people who come and bring their children to this. The relationship, which I've been able to observe, and the expertise of Gary, of Carly, of Amy, of those who lead the 6 o'clock, the evening choir, is a good relationship. I have been in ministry in one form or another for 30 years or so. Yes, I'm new here. I have seen absolute disasters at some churches. I come here and I see something that is creative, that is building bridges between the evening choir, that is leading worship, in my opinion, beautifully in the morning, that all sorts of things are happening because of this younger choir. And you know, most of all, that choir, when they go out into the vestry after a service, they pray. It is making an impact on my granddaughter's life and all those. An impact that is going to lead to them, I'm sure, becoming part of choirs that indeed are singing those traditional hymns. And I mean, you know.
So it's just social reasons.
No, it's not. No, I'm sorry. No, I have to disagree.
Okay, we're going to have to...
For those of us that lead busy lives, they come here to worship, right, and to praise God. They're not led in worship. Those difficult hymns.
Right, Paul, we've had this conversation at the APCM every year for about 6 or 7 years. The fact that we've got a split choir. The fact that we've got children in the morning and then we've got a more senior choir in the evening.
Now, you've got the benefits of the microphone, and I haven't. The reality is that we're spending the most money on our smallest audience, and that is just that. And this is an issue that will continue to come up. If it's come up for the last 6 years, then it's come up for a reason. And for the rest of it, Martin and I wrote to your treasurer 3 months ago and asked to have these conversations in private, that we were refused that opportunity. And no member of your standing committee or any member of the management team here have come back to us on the issues that we raised concerning the very genuine concerns we have about the church and about how it's being run. Now, I'm sorry that this is inconvenient.
It's not inconvenient, it's what this is for.
You like what I have to say. However, I would rather suspect that others still are singing to that I'm doing. And that is that the choir is there. Yeah, the Hoodie Choir can lead us with amazing grace. Fantastic, we all know it. But when it comes to those hymns, that choir masters all others choose, that we don't know, they can't lead us. Because they don't have the voice that my very colleague has, or that you have. They have little voices. They're just children. Right? And they are to be encouraged, and they are to be supported, and we should do all those things. What we should be doing is pitching the Hoodie Choir against the choir. The choir needs to perform at the most important service
Right.
of the church.
I will say this now, and this is my own personal thing, as I sing in evening choir, as you're aware. The commitment to choir to sing at 2 practices a week and 2 services on Sunday is huge. And unfortunately, in this day and age, you can't get that commitment out of choirs. St Peter's have been without a choir master for over a year. We've got 2, and we do. And on occasions at special services, those choirs will come together and sing. But I can pretty much guarantee you, if you turned round to the senior members or even the junior members of the evening choir and said, right, we now want you to sing Sunday morning, Sunday night, practice on Monday, practice on a Friday, those choirs will stop very quickly. 30 years ago, things were different. Things were dying. Formal choral has always been in the evening.
So we'll just carry on doing things the way we do, irrespective of the fact that the congregation really wanted choir, that you're going to try and do that. It's okay, just carry on.
If the adults of the evening choir wish to come and sing with the Hoodies, they have always been told they can. Carly's never turned anyone away. No, but what I'm saying is the adults who sing at evening choir, and the children as well, have been invited on several occasions by Carly to come and join Sunday morning service, and they don't. For whatever reason. I'd love to. Inviting choir members in is extremely difficult. People do not have the commitment and time to do it. I mean, we're always looking for new choristers, but we do struggle. Yes, Martin? Band. No,
It's
no.
absolutely great. But you've also got to remember, we're now spending £30,000 a year on the choir, because when you add up the cost of paying for all the extra people you've got, plus the when we go away on tour, it's £30,000 a year. It's a massive commitment.
I'd have to.
So I just think to have them once a month, we have the brilliant band, we have the brilliant hoodies, it's a great mix, and I think we will really go for it there. It would be really, really good. And I think that's what the PCC need to seriously consider.
Can I say that that would probably be the best discussion to have when we have a new incumbent about how they want to run services? Because at the end of the day, the content of the services is the prerogative of the incumbent, though the PCC can, of course, make recommendations. It can be noted, and it can certainly be brought up for discussion. The suggestion that we do it once a month or once a quarter or something, certainly, Martin. Are there any other questions, comments about the reports? In which case I'm going to hand over to Dean for our finances.
Good morning, everyone. Oh.
Is that working?
Morning. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah?
Good.
Getting a nod there, thank you. Okay. Can't step any further back, I won't be able to read. Excuse me. Well, you might want to turn me down a bit. Morning, so I'm Dean Plowman, Treasurer of the PCC. Before I get into financial matters, I think it's fair to say that we need to recognise how difficult an interregnum is and really be thankful for the extraordinary efforts that both the wardens, Dan, Alison and the ministry team are kind of putting in to make sure that our services run like clockwork in the absence of a vicar. You can never plan for an interregnum. Oh, you can't hear me? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. All right. I'll try again. I was just making the point about how we should be thankful for the team, both the ministry team and the wardens, Dan, in helping us through this interregnum. Really difficult time for any church, and we really should be thankful for their efforts. On to my particular area of responsibility. So I'm the Treasurer, here to talk about church finances. To make my report really easy to find, I published it in a separate document to the APCM booklet. It's not quite true. I missed the publication deadline, so that's why you've got a separate financial report, and we'll come on to that as we go through this report. I've got a few messages. Some of those won't be a surprise. We've talked about them previously, but we'll go through the report, and I'll just highlight some of the pertinent points about income and expenditure. I think the first point, and I alluded to this in my report, was, and it was a surprise to me when I first joined the church, that we are 100% financially self-sufficient. Okay, so we receive no income from government, no income from the Church of England. Every penny of income that we generate comes from us. Us, we, you, the congregation, the local community, through attending services, donations, and the use of our facilities. So, if you wonder why we talk about the importance of fundraising and keeping the efficiency of giving up and making sure our giving keeps pace with inflation, that's the reason why. Because we are the only source of our income for this church. So, how do we put the donations and fundraising to work in our church? We'll review the sources of income as we go through this session. Sections 1 to 5 of your booklet explain all of the good work that goes on in our church. Okay? It explains what we've done to promote the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ here in Penn, and that's really the important stuff. Section 6, which is my treasurer's report, really tells us how those financial resources support that work. Sorry. There's a couple of views of our finances in my report, whether your preference is to look at the pie chart summary data or the financial data that supports that. The data is the same, just a matter of how you prefer to consume it. So what are the sources of income? Well, in the pie chart on the top left-hand corner, you'll see that 53% of our income, about £153,000, is what we call voluntary income. Okay, so it comes from regular giving, standing orders, collections at services, the gift aid that we claim on those donations, and also legacies and one-off donations. And that was about £15,700 higher, about 11% higher than it was in the preceding year. If you look at that detail, you'll see that actually some of that increase, or a lot of that increase, was due to higher levels of standard order giving. And some of you that were here last year, you'll remember that I mentioned how many standing orders had not been increased over years and years, and therefore had been eroded by inflation. So it's really, really good to see that standing orders increased by about £8,000 last year, about 11%. So thanks to every one of you that have responded to that call. And dare I ask, if you haven't increased your standing order again this year, then please consider doing so. Our costs increase every year due to inflation. It's important that our income does too. In addition to the standing orders, we had other donations and legacies that were £10,000 higher than in the preceding year. You'll also see that our property and room income increased significantly in 2024. And that's really because, well, two things really. Brenton Road, okay, the property that we have in Brenton Road, that received a full year's worth of rental income at a higher, more market-aligned rental. And that generated about £12,500 more income last year. In addition to that, due to Donna Williams's fantastic efforts in encouraging community use of our meeting spaces, the income on the hall and the Oak Room increased by about £8,000 as well. Income from wedding and funerals, that was up about 18,600. So we had 9 weddings last year, significantly more weddings. Unfortunately, we had more funerals too, but that did mean that our income was up about £4,500 when compared to the prior year. Fundraising continued. Fundraising income was up about it was down £1,000 on the prior year, but it was about 8,500 in total for the year. So thanks to everyone that's involved in fundraising for the church. It remains a really important source of income. Income from specific purposes, and that will include the donations that we received towards the organ restoration project. That was significantly up. As I alluded to in my report, we've raised over £30,000 towards that organ project. We think the organ project is probably going to end up somewhere in the region of about £70,000. Okay, so when we look at the funds that we have as a church, and we look at the surplus that we generated last year, some of that will be because we have taken in those donations, and we will have expenditures to come against them. So in terms of our income for last year, How can I summarise this? Well, giving was up because we had increased income from standing orders and legacies. Property, room and rental income was up due to the increased rents and occupancies. Wedding and funeral income was also up through to the number of services. And all other income was up as well, primarily due to the donations that we received towards the organ project. So in total, our income last year was £288,000, which was £70,000 higher than the preceding year. Okay, so what did we do with that income? What did we do with that £288,000 of income? Well, we didn't spend it all, that's for sure. We spent £244,000, okay, so we had a surplus of £44,000 for the year. So what did we spend it on? Well, if you look at those pie charts again, at the bottom left pie chart in my report, you'll see that the second largest item, and that's the element of the pie that's between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock, represents the common fund that we pay to Lichfield. So we pay £61,000, about 25% of our expenditure over to Lichfield. And that amount covers the cost of our priest in Penn, when we have one, as well as contributions to the costs of priests in less fortunate parishes than ourselves, plus the contribution to the overheads of running the diocesan administration team. So that's £61,000 of expenditure. The largest category of our expenditure, about 40% of everything that we spend, goes on our properties and buildings. Okay, and that totaled about £97,000 in 2024. So costs were higher than the preceding year. We had the hall lounge repair, and we're thankful to the Scouts for their contribution towards that. And also we saw increases in utility costs as we rolled off 3-year fixed rate contracts into a market where the rates were significantly higher. And that added about £3,600 to our building costs. Our staff costs, we have 2 members of staff, Sue and Donna, so that they came in about £26,000 in total and were worth about 10% of our expenditure. And that was about 3% higher than the preceding year. You'll also be aware that as a church, we continue to tithe your donations, okay? So we pledge 1/10 of everything that you give in terms of our voluntary income to local, national and global charities. You can read the list of beneficiaries in Paul Beeston's Transforming Communities report on page 10 of your booklet, and that accounted for about £11,000 in 2024. Our outreach costs were relatively modest, about £3,200, so that's the breakdown of the total expenditure of £244,000, which was £15,000 or 7% higher than in 2023. So we had a surplus of income over expenditure of £44,000. We also earned some dividends and interest income on our investments for about £4,400 for the year. So that's income and expenditure. If you're interested in the balance sheet, you can see that in my report as well. So I've got a balance sheet at 31st of December 24. You'll see that the church ended the year for the first time in its history with over £1 million of net assets. Okay, but before we get too excited about that and start thinking about what we can spend that money on, I'll remind you that 833,000 of that, or about 80%, are non-cash capital assets. So effectively, they're the properties that we have valued at the Church Hall and the house on Brenton Road. So our non-property assets are about £205,000, and they're represented on the last page of my report. So I'll remind you that general fund, including the title, they're for general use. Designated funds are funds that are designated by the PCC for a particular purpose. And restricted funds are funds that are received for and can only be spent on the purposes that the donations were received for. So excluding those restricted funds, the PCC had £146,000 of unrestricted funds at the end of the year. Okay, I've already mentioned that some of that will be utilised to complete the organ work. We've had £31,000 of donations I've alluded to. The project's going to come in just over £70,000, so obviously there's about £40,000 of that 146 that will be used to complete the organ refurbishment. Okay, so what can we do to continue to improve the financial position of our church? I've given these messages previously. If you're new to our church, please donate via standing order if you don't already do so. I know the tap and to donate is really easy, really convenient. But if you don't make it to church, your card doesn't too, and then we don't get the income. Review your levels regularly and increase them where you can. So trying to keep pace with inflation. So it's good practice to increase levels of giving in January every year, but don't wait till January if you haven't already done so. Make sure you donate efficiently. Okay, so we look to gift aid as much as we can. So if you are a taxpayer and we can claim gift aid on your donation, then please speak to Barb Edwards over there, who's our gift aid secretary, and we'll get that gift aid claim back. It's an important source of income for us. And please consider giving naming St Bart's as a beneficiary for a small or large part of your estate, and you will. People that did this in the past have really helped contribute to the life of our church. So if you think about the lighting project, the heating projects in both the churches, the fabric and repair to the roof, we talked about the organ project. So all of these legacies have contributed to all of this this activity in our church, which frankly without them we wouldn't have been able to do all of that work. So that's it from me in terms of the summary of our finances. It would be remiss of me not to mention and thank the people that contribute to everything that goes into financial reporting within the church. So Barb Edwards, Richard Pithers, how they can commit as much of the time as they do to our church, I don't know, but we're thankful that they do. The PCC and the Standing Committee, who spend many hours poring over the financial reporting and the accounts of the church. Donna Williams and Sue Cole for their attention to detail, and Donna's drive to generate as much income for the church through the use of our buildings, and the money stewards and wardens for all of the counting activity that goes on. There's about 25 people across our church who support treasury activities. That's quite a considerable team. We are almost like a small company in terms of size, so it does take an extraordinary amount of work to maintain that, to keep that running. That's it from me. I'm happy to take questions either now or after the service. As Martin alluded to, if you want to write to me, I will return and I will respond. But thanks for listening this morning. Thank you. Yes, Paul.
Martin and I wrote into you in February,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't had a business meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been better if it was 25 people involved in finances, as you pointed out in the church, for us to have the opportunity to sit down and talk about coffee, rather than my shouting it from a sedentary position here in the church. I hope you agree. However, the review position you've taken, that you've got an open door policy on this,
Mm-hmm.
because clearly you haven't responded to the questions that we raised. Church has lost almost £47,000 over the last 4 years, and my concern, but according to the charity commission there to be believed, that my concern in respect to this year's figures are that they are very clearly inflated. So you've got revenue of, I think, 286,000, but £29,000 of that funds for specifically the organ. That means that you didn't make a surplus of 40,000, you made a surplus of 20,000 and less. And by the way, that's what I mean in the accounts, providing contingent liabilities are on the other side of the balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not. You haven't put the other £40,000 negative, and if you did, then we would have made a £20,000 loss. Now, there's very clearly some actions that need to be taken. I think this church has got a debt of gratitude to John Norton for reducing the parish share from £120,000 a year to £60,000 a year just a few years ago. Quite clearly now, at £60,000
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, a few comments there. Firstly, you're absolutely right. Yes, Mike?
Mike, do you want the microphone? Shall I take it? Would you? Let me just turn it on. Thank you, Martin.
And you've got a place in life.
Hopefully that will help.
Sorry, apologies about that. Yeah, I'll not go through it all, but church accounts are technically very difficult and very demanding. Large amounts of small income streams, large amounts of small expenditure streams. The level of expertise required to prepare them bears no resemblance to the size of the organisation. I don't think we should mention this every year, but every now and again I think we should be reminded just how demanding Dean's job is. I wouldn't like to do the job. That was it.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, just to address your points, Paul. You're absolutely right. So Paul wrote to me and I had a communication from Paul and Martin back in February that I have committed to respond to. Haven't responded to that yet. The reason being is, as Mike alluded to, I do this voluntary. I've got a day job, a very, very big day job. And I mentioned 25 people that contribute to finance. Out of those 25, there are 2 accountants, myself and Barb. We put as much time as we can into delivering these church accounts. It is like running a small company. If anybody else can do that as part-time, as a side on to a full-time job, then please help me, because we're always looking for additional resource to help in that matters. But coming back to the point, I take the point, Paul, that I'm still yet to respond to your questions, which I will do, now that we've got the year end behind us and the APCM behind us. So I'll actually absolutely respond to those. I don't agree with the fact that the church is loss-making for the year. You're absolutely right. The income is flattered by £30,000, but in total our surplus was £44,000 for the year. And that there are always one-offs and timing gaps between things happening in the church in terms of money that comes in and expenditure that goes out. As we know, when we raise funds for certain projects, then those funds are very much raised in advance of those projects. So it's very common for the income to come in ahead of that expenditure. And you do have to look at, certainly given the size of our projects, when we looked at the heating projects, the lighting projects, really significant projects of expenditure, to expect the fact that that has an impact on our income and expenditure over a lengthy period. So I do take that on board. The final point was around the parish share, and I guess we'll disagree on this, right? Because you're absolutely right. Historically, our parish share ran up to a maximum of about £114,000, and is presently at 61. So there's a lot of work that the diocese has done to review parish share. We are one of the largest, wealthiest parishes in the diocese, and it's right that we pay our way and contribute to those parishes that maybe aren't as fortunate as ourselves. Personally, that's £61,000. I think when you take into account the cost of clergy that we have, and also the other costs associated with the providing clergy to other parishes, I don't see that as excessive. I don't think there's an opportunity for us to go to the diocese and say this needs to be a variable payment at all. It is a fixed contribution that we are asked to make, and we should make, and we should feel really good about the fact that we make that contribution. So I think we'll disagree on that, Paul. But I will come back to all of the other points that you raised.
Can I just say this?
Sorry, and what was the expenditure of the projects that we delivered in that year, Paul? As I've just explained, income and expenditure will vary over a period of time, and that is reflected through the income and expenditure statement.
Do you want it?
That's your view, Paul. Yeah.
Is it on?
Buttons at the bottom, Martin.
Is that it?
Stand up, Martin.
Yeah, just 1 or 2 points. What would be useful doing, I appreciate you've got a massive amount of work, and there's quite a few of us who volunteer in the community, and we know how difficult it is if we could have half a day with the finance committee where we can actually sit down and have time to go through this, so maybe we could help release the burden on what you have, and we would understand a little bit more about what is going on. What I'd like to say is, first of all, Donna needs fantastic praise for the work she's done. I know she wasn't well a while ago. She's done brilliantly in raising all the money and the revenue from the different facilities. But if I could just say that the saddest thing for me is you've been saying, well, we've made all this money, £40,000, and yet the Scouts remain to pay £5,000 for repairs on the community hall, which is used by a range of people. Now, I just cannot understand why this is, why we have this attitude towards young people. If you look at the budget, we have a massive £45 for youth in the budget, £45. And yet, here we are a few minutes ago talking about £30,000 for the choir, which we never see, or most of that. So I think we need to really address this. And again, that half-day meeting we might have would be very useful for the people to actually discuss these things. We've said how much we value music, but we just need a rebalancing. I'm not saying get rid of it, rebalance it, that's all. And they don't have an evening service on the day that those choristers come into the morning service. They've got families, they've got care responsibilities, we understand that. So I just think we need to have that time. So well done to some of the backup staff who've done a brilliant job. all we're saying is, I think we just need our voice to be heard a little bit. Please give us the time to do that.
Okay.
Paul, you wanted to say something?
Okay, I'm the person guilty with a little committee, making the donations to various charities. I think it's a very should not be just a church. It's part of our Christian witness that we should help those from all different walks of life, you know, in our country, our community, and internationally. And therefore, this is something, a core principle of Christian attitude and belief and faith that we give this money. And I think, Paul, you've been very negative in your assessment of our financial situation, because as Dean's pointed out, the giving has gone up with standing orders, the giving, the earnings have gone up through the rents from the church halls. You've got various initiatives which have been introduced like the farmers market, much better use of that, and our finances really are a lot more stable and positive than what you're alluding to.
But it's a very great pity that you don't say that the children who are in need here in this community shouldn't have our investment.
I don't.
We should go to the Middle East instead. You know, perhaps you're right. I mean, there's a lot of
We should go to locally and internationally.
Well, you don't see Middle Earth.
Some of the charities are actually charities which work in Wolverhampton for the health of children.
Maybe we have a look at, maybe we have a look at youth development. I've been around the other churches working in Penguin, and there's some fantastic work going on, but they need more support. And this church can be a real leader in redeveloping some of that with your help, maybe.
In Penguin, there were some applications for some youth work for projects for both Penguin and Hills. So therefore there is investment going on in youth. It's not just the £36 which was mentioned in the report. I'm sure it was many thousands of pounds, as I understand it, which went through the Penguin. But you're probably right. We would like to see more youth work within the church, and newly formed organisations, unfortunately, they can't get the volunteers, like yourself and indeed many other people are too busy to run youth organisations, so we don't get the volunteers to do it anymore. It's just one of the changes in society, unfortunately.
Barbara, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I've been a member of this church since 1976, and we went through a period where our finances were so poor, we were unable to make donations of 10%, which is part of the Christian commitment. I would say to you all here that the situation that this church is now in and the Christian principles that we've now got are incredibly so much stronger than when we were not giving 10% tithing.
Right, I'm going to kind of... Sorry, Iris.
Thank you.
Hi, so just, I'm going to come in on some really everybody, which is a bit bizarre. With the tithing, I've picked up in here that we're tithing, what was it, 11,000. But if our income, including gift aid, was 153,000, should we not be tithing on that gift aid as well as an income? For me, I think the blessing, Barbara, is in tithing. And I think my personal opinion is that we should tithe on all of our income, because I have seen places where
I've done throughout the year, and presumably if you come to the church, you've read the blog, right? I put in sort of every sort of month, and another two charities we've given money to are this and how they spent their money. So you've got the list of all the charities and tithing today before, but you've also had an explanation throughout the year in the blog of the charities in more detail.
And I've read that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is I think it could be enhanced, and I think you would find that people would respond to that.
Okay. How would you like me to enhance it?
In the past, Paul, we've had people come into our services, the recipients of our donations, and tell us about their activities. So maybe we can revisit that.
Well, I'm not involved in planning services, but if you want to create a slot, okay, I'm sure we may be able to get some of the organisations to come to speak.
Let's take this away to PCC. So what I'm hearing is more tithing potentially, and also communication around where that's tithing.
There was a data protection issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that's around the salaries.
Alma, pass it to our technical assistant if it's a problem. There you go.
Sorry about that. My point was I think we should probably be tithing more and tithing on all of our income rather than just our net income. Something that God challenged me on a long time ago. Do I tithe on my gross income or my net income? And Scripture says we give the first. Okay, well, I'm telling you now, yeah? Was challenged a lot about my gross income, and I've become firmly entrenched in that, I'm afraid. I think we should be giving on our gross income, not our net. Follow Scripture and do that. My other point was about who we give to. I personally would like to know a little bit more about that, and to pick up on Paul's point, what's being done locally and what's being done nationally and why we're supporting those people. I would find that helpful. My last point, if I may, Dean, was around data protection issues. Again, I've spent a lifetime in governance. I'm not sure how appropriate it is, although I understand we have to share how much we've spent on salaries to identify individual people's salaries. And I think that should perhaps be combined. We all accept that we have staff here who are paid. I don't really want to know their salaries, and if I was in their position, I wouldn't want that for me.
You don't know their salaries. We talk about the cost of our staff.
Okay, but you can. I think if we put those two together, it might just make life a little bit easier in terms of data protection. That was my final point. Thank you.
Very quickly, because we are massively over time.
I'm just coming back to what... Okay, I'm just coming back to the question I asked originally at the start, which was AOB from last year's meeting to do with the legacy fund that Betty Parks left. And it was suggested that the Finance Committee look to allocate the remaining fund to the organ fund. Can we have an update on that, please?
So this was the Betty Park window legacy. So under the terms of Betty's will, any remaining funds having righted for the window would go into general fund. So those funds have gone into general fund initially, and then have been allocated to not so much the organ project. It was the heating project in the prior year that those funds were utilised for.
Okay, can I just come back? Sorry if it's pursuing this a little bit too much, but can I just have it clear in my head that the Scouts paid for the replacement of the floor in the small area in the church hall?
Not completely true.
Okay, so what was the balance? Do you reckon that it came from the Scouts and church?
Scouts made a donation voluntarily at a meeting with Ben towards the hall and the church of £5,000. And that was to be spent as we deemed fit.
And the overall cost was?
I couldn't tell you.
Dean, is that possible for you to say?
Not off the top of my head. I'll have to come back and confirm. But as Kath alluded to, the £5,000 donation was not specifically for the lounge. I think it was a contribution from the Scouts to all of the the activities that go on and the rooms that they utilise throughout the year. So I'll confirm that back to you.
Okay, because that's actually a very generous donation from the youth organisation in the parish that have contributed to something that benefits all of us and outside organisations as well. So I think the Scouts should be commended for that. Yeah.
They were.
Thank you.
Right. Unless there's anything desperately urgent, I'm going to call a halt to this section. Apologies for the time. Thank you very much, everyone. Dean, and your team. We'll move on to something a little bit more fun, which is the election of our officers of church. Do you want to give me that back? This way. Thank you. We'll turn that off, because otherwise feedback's going to be awful. There we go. Right, our first point of business after this is the election of our church wardens. We have 2 nominations this year. I'm going to make you stand up, but that's all. We have Janet Shackleton and we have Dave Nichols. You can sit down now, thank you very much. Just so people know your face, because as often happens with things like this, people don't realise who they can go to and who their wardens are. I would say what they do, but I'm not going to get into that because that's horrendous. As we have no other nominations that I am aware of, unless anybody has any objections, I'm going to nominate, they have been nominated here, that we accept both David and Janet. Sorry to full name you. Inez Church warden. Yes. Seconded by Martin Stokes. Sorry guys, you're in. Anybody have any objections to our 2 new church wardens? Anybody against our 2? Right. Everybody, anyone for? Anyone? I think that's pretty much what we can call unanimous. Thank you very much.